Welcome back. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Griha. Now, the GST Council's decision to levy 28% GST on the turnover of online gaming has caused apprehension in India's booming gaming industry. A shared sentiment among all stakeholders of India's sprawling online gaming industry. Members of the gaming industry, in fact, believe that a change in the valuation of tax on the total consideration will cause irreversible damage to the industry, lead to loss of revenue to the exchequer, and also the loss of employment for lakhs of skilled engineers. But if we were to quote the finance minister, Mrs. Niramala Sitharaman, she has in fact reiterated that the intent was not to end any industry linked to online gaming, but there was definitely a deliberation on the moral question of whether these should be taxed at the same rate as essential items. Now remember, the GST Council, in its 50th meeting, has decided to levy a uniform 28% tax on full face value for online gaming, casinos and horse racing, while reducing the rate for uncooked or unfried snack pellets, cancer medication and also the imitation zari thread. Now, the meeting also clarified that the rate for food and beverages that are sold inside multiplexes and the definition for all utility vehicles should be actually put in place in order to bring parity for class and cess levy. Now, online gaming, which is a truly dominant form of home entertainment, is one of the fastest growing industry in the world, which is now tipped to maintain its recent rapid growth. And with that, it could be worth $321 billion by 2026. Not just that, it's also one that has set a blueprint that several other emerging tech markets have followed. And with faces like Virat Kohli, MS Dhoni and Saurav Ganguly endorsing the online gaming platforms, the judgment coming in now is whether being rigorously questioned is something that can be done. So in the face of all this and this decision, we do try and decode whether India's inks fear that this new taxation could nip the nascent sector legitimate or not.
There will be an amendment to the Section 3 of the GST, Schedule 3 of the GST Act, and we will be bringing in online gaming into the actionable claim list, where item number 6 very clearly says betting, gaming and lotteries. Betting, gambling and lotteries are already in it. We will be including online gaming also into it.
Now, before we open this up for debate, let's first look at India's online gaming industry. What does it bring to the table as far as a boost to economy? Let's first understand the market relevance. So we are given to understand that the market is expected to grow to 8.6 billion by 2027 if we solely look at India. And if this entire annual growth is compounded, then the rate can go up from 28 to 30%. That's how important that industry is, and it is going to be impacting the economy in a good way. Now, if we look at the user base, it's expected to rise above 500 million by 2025. So in the next 2 years, more than 500 million users are going to be part of this online gaming platform. If we go further, we are given to understand that 120 million Indian gamers are currently paying users. So all of that goes on to add to the money that's coming into the exchequer. And as far as the India record is concerned, India has recorded 15 billion downloads in the financial year 2022. But if we look at the overview of the arguments, despite all of these that have been put in place, what are the arguments that have been put as far as the GST Council is concerned, going for the 28% tax levy, and what are the arguments against it? Let's take a look at both the sides. Now, the GST Council, in fact, says that the online gaming, the taxation itself will be a major contributor to the exchequer. The argument that's against is that this is going to hamper the capacity for the gaming sector's growth. And the impinging upon the growth is a major argument that is against this tax levy. If we go further, they also go on to claim that this is going to be an entry barrier for people who are in fact coming into the startup sector. If we actually go ahead and ask the other, like I mentioned, this is also going to be a threat on job losses. Like they said, lakhs of jobs are going to be taken away because of this 28% tax levy. If we take a look at the next point, this is also the argument that's against it, that it impacts the vision to make India a global gaming hub. At least that is what the projection was. But if we go ahead with that tax levy, this is not going to happen, is what is the argument against it. Another argument that the GST Council is making is that there should be a level playing field between the online and traditional gaming platforms. The argument against that is that this cannot be equated to skill-based games with chance-based games. Because earlier, that sort of a demarcation was not really presented when these platforms were allowed to proliferate for 10 years. And that's the argument precisely against it, that why did they not really think about it when it is about skilled and chance-based game. Another argument that's for it is that against it is that this emboldens black market offshore gaming platforms, so people who don't even pay taxes will end up benefiting from this exercise. Another argument by the GST Council, it creates clarity in sector riddled with revenue probes. They go on to claim that this is a market that is veiled by, in fact, an opacity, and that is how it's actually operated is not yet known. But the argument against it is that they are sending mixed signals to the investors. All the foreign investors are going to be spooked. The government also goes on to say that, in fact, the argument against it is that the government had earlier recognized this as a separate status for and potential sector, but now they are claiming otherwise. And that is what is, in fact, saying that this is not going to be something that will go well with the Indian gaming industry. Let me now open it to my guest on the broadcast, Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg, who's a former Finance Secretary, Government of India, is with us on the broadcast this evening. Also with us is Mr. Jiten Jain, who's a cyber law expert. And last but not the least, Khushbu Jain, who's a founding partner of ARC Legal and also an advocate, is also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Garg, let me begin with you. What, after this decision of the 28% tax levy, how do you think it is going to be impacting the online gaming industry, the fast booming industry? Do you think that the worries from the gaming industry stakeholders are real?
See, the most damaging part of the decisions which the GST Council made is to treat or bring the online gaming at par with the betting and gambling and the horse racing, and deny the exemption which is available to the actionable claims like loans and others, on which the GST is not levied on the principal amount of the actionable claim. Now, how it works out is that if you're playing an online game,
yes,
where you're depositing, let's say, 100 rupees, and out of which the platform which has provided the online gaming services gets about 10 rupees or so, and 90 rupees goes to the prize pool. Now, with this change, which is being proposed, the GST would be levied on 100 rupees, which is at 28%, 28 rupees of GST, yes. Whereas the GST platform is getting or creating the value of only rupees 10, which is what it is getting. And therefore, literally, this change which has been proposed makes the GST not 28%, but about 20 to 280% of the value added. GST is levied on the value added, not on the amount of the actionable claim. 28% decision is not all that significant. It makes difference. But the biggest hit is this decision. I think this will impact the gaming industry very badly. Online gaming is the future of entertainment, future of gaming. All the gamers as well as the people who have time on their hands use it for their entertainment. This, if it stays, will hurt it very badly. I think it's a very, very poor decision.
Okay. Khushbu Jain, do you think the GST Council did not really take into account all of these aspects before really deciding on that 28% tax levy? Something that's been mentioned by Mr. Garg?
See, I let me put my opinion into it. I would say that a lot of deliberation happened when imposing of a 28% of a GST on the online gaming industry, and there was a fair example of casinos that we have, that how two states in the country earn so much of revenue, levied on the casino, and how others are being left aside because now online gaming.
Okay, some problem with that link. Jiten Jain, would you like to come in here?
See, I'm not a cyber law expert. I am a cyber security expert.
Okay.
But let me come to the core of the problem.
Sure.
First of all, whether we go to buy, see a movie or watch a play at the theater, we always pay GST at the full value. Now, the movie theater could also claim that, look, I have bought a movie from the producer from 90 rupees. So if I'm selling you a ticket on 100, I will leave GST only on the value added, which is 10 rupees. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to pay GST at the full value. That's number one. Second, all these companies they themselves decided that they will deduct 18% GST as a service on that 10 rupees, what they were saying as this is our original revenue. Who decided it was 10%? Because these companies thought that we can sell online gaming and this gambling as a service. First of all, this is not a service, this is purely a digital satta. So it cannot be equated with essential commodities or service, number one. Number two, I think all this shroud of cooked up arguments, which are nicely designed PR releases that will lead to job losses, tax cuts, hamper industry. Let me ask you, which is the most popular game in India? PUBG. Owned by a foreign company. How much tax do they pay in India last 3 years? Nil. What is the level of addiction? People are paying for 6 hours, the highest number of users. So let us not, cook up these theories with a nicely worded PR release. Third question I want to ask. You see, now chickens have come host to roost. I agree with the argument, which is raised that you cannot equate skill-based game with the chance-based games, with the sattas. The problem is for 10 years, they managed, I'm sorry to say, they managed the whole bureaucratic ecosystem and the setup in India by getting some favorable orders from some court, by convincing the judge or confusing the judge, I would say.
No, but can that argument not be used against the GST Council? Did the government also not allow them to proliferate for 10 years? Why 10 years?
Let me complete, madam.
Yes.
All these attempts to sell, digital satta gambling, games like Dream 11 as game of skills. Now, if that is a game of skill, then the government has decided there is no actually way to differentiate between a game of skill and a game of chance. So let's put everything together in the same basket. Okay. Now, because of this false narrative of selling game of chance as game of skill, the original game of skill innovators will also suffer. I think what government should have done, they should have actually banned this digital sattas. Only states where casino gambling and this money, gambling is allowed, this game of chance could be allowed, and government should have clearly differentiated what is a game of skill and what is a game of chance. Now, because no one want to get into that whole problem of jugglery of game of skill and game of chance, government decided that instead of going into that, let's put everything in the same basket. Okay. So I think what industry tried to make most of it by selling this satta as this game of skill. Okay. Now they have to pay 28% tax, and government has indicated all these things are sattas and gambling, and they will be equated as the same way.
Jiten, got your point. Mr. Garg, I'd like you to come in here. Is there a policy inconsistency in this case? 10 years, they decide whether it is a game of skill or not, and then they put a 28% tax levy saying that let's put all eggs in the same basket, quoting by what Jiten is saying. But don't you think there should have been done earlier? And is this not going to be spooking foreign investors from coming into India, or for that matter, these Indian startups? Because most of these industries are SMEs, small and medium industries that are there. Would they not, in fact, branch out, probably start functioning out of India, go to a country like Singapore, Dubai, and function out of there? Even that has been presented as an argument by all the fantasy sports.
I think let's first get the main issue raised by our co-panelist out of the way.
Yes.
When you give an example of a movie ticket proceeds which the theater owner gets it, that entire receipt is the theater's income. 90% of that doesn't go back to the contributors as their prize money. Therefore, equating the movie proceeds with the online platform's receipt of what the platform receipt receives in the form of revenue is an entirely wrong. This is actionable claim. The equation is when you borrow from someone or the bank lends to you, the bank doesn't pay GST on the amount lent or even on the amount received as interest payments. The bank pays GST on what it receives as its own service charges. That is what is the equation. And that is what complicates the entire situation most. I think we must not get into this trap of treating the online gaming as an actionable claim, out of the actionable claim, and levy the tax on the entire amount which is given as deposit. So that's the first point, I think. Now, the second issue, which is getting raised and to my mind acts to the confusion in the entire system, is this game of skills versus the game of chance.
Yes.
There is a very legitimate argument that the games of chance are very close to gambling, or you may call it speculation or betting. And the game of chance, game of pure chance, are something which may be morally reprehensible as well. However, if the tax authorities want to tax that kind of morally reprehensible income or the value added, it can tax at a higher rate. But to sort of tarnish that all the games which are being played online today, whether it's the game of chess or whether it's game of cards, or now enormous amount of esports are coming up in the world where the sports are being played online. The digital gaming is the future of the world. It also eliminates lots of constraints. Today, the chess you can play physically if you are there, but online you can play it across the world, wherever you are. So that is where the future is. The gaming is going to be online, and that is where the skills would be used. So if you exclude, if you can distinguish between the games of skill and levy it at a lower tax rate, and tax the game of chance at a higher rate, that's fine. So if we are unable to do both of these distinctions right, that we tax the entire deposit instead of the value add, and we tax the game of skills as well as the game of chance.
Lots of confusion and impracticability is what you're claiming right now, Mr. Garg. But let me bring you...
creating the tax policy which is completely dysfunctional. And this will lead to what you were saying, to the destruction of this industry and the future value added in the country.
Khushbu Jain's back with us on the broadcast. Khushbu, the earlier point that you were making before you got cut off, do you think the GST Council did not take into account all of this? And when it is about this argument that's been made by the gaming industry in the country, there are tax exemptions as tax holidays that are given to boost a certain business in India. But that doesn't mean that they can be tax exempt throughout. Do you think that needs to be put into account in this case?
There has been a lot of deliberation that happened. If you look into today's decision which has been come up, and if you look into, there was example, as I was saying earlier also, that we have example of 2 states where casinos, the kind of revenue that is earned by these casinos is exorbitant, and all other states are getting exempted from it because of the online gaming is yet not been included in any of the tax regime. That's where the question comes in play, because if you look into India is becoming one of the largest or world's leading market when you talk about gaming industry. I don't think so we need to boost more because it's already there. We have one of the largest players coming from our country, and that is adding to our digital economy GDP. And to add that's where we're bringing in that let there be a parity, let there be parity.
I'm really sorry, we'd have to leave it at that. That's all the time that I had on the broadcast, but thank you so much for offering your views, and thank you so much for joining me on this big debate. This is going to continue. We'll see where does it head from here and whether at all it's detrimental to the gaming industry in the country or not. With that, it's a wrap.